I'm really interested to understand more about the flagellum. So the flagellum are those tiny little micro hairs that you're talking about in your ears. Typically, we see flagellum on biology as a mode of transportation, but we have the same like cilia in our lungs and in our ears. Those are those little micro antennas that are picking it up. And your theory on why we don't hear like a dog hears, like all of these fucking vibrations from super high to super low, I bet you're right. It's an evolutionary defense mechanism. As we've evolved and made our planet noisier and noisier, the only way to compensate was to start filtering out some of that shit so we didn't go completely insane.
Mm-hmm.
It might be.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just agreeing.
Yeah, it might be interesting to study, like, some of these tribes that perhaps have not had a lot of exposure to humanity. Now, they'll be living in a noisy atmosphere. I don't know if you've been to Costa Rica. I mean, some of those jungles, the noise is deafening. Like, I've been to places in Puerto Rico, up in El Yunque, which is a sacred mountain there, the Rainmaker. And the insects are so loud, you can't hear anything. It's deafening. Now, is Costa Rica similar to that?
Well, we had howler monkeys every morning at 4 a.m. And doing these, they're very loud and they're not that big. But yeah, there was a nice pleasant hum in the background. It was kind of a contrast because this summer I was in Ukraine, and so I spent a month. I was kind of all over the place, but part of my time in Ukraine was spent in the Carpathians, and it was very quiet. And one reason why is that they have the closed airspace. So there's no normal air traffic going into Lviv or Kyiv or anything, Odessa. So I only heard like one plane the entire time. And that was actually, that's a different story. It was like kind of like a war thing. But regardless, they don't have many birds there in the Carpathians. There's no real insects. I mean, it's kind of a bland landscape in many ways, because I guess just over time, the Europeans didn't want bears and wolves or whatever. And so I was tent camping at this place. I like to tent camp. I do deep earthing experiments. So I have like I'm inside right now, but when I go to sleep tonight, I'll be in my earthing tent outside, even though it's like, freezing at night. Because I connect to these telluric currents and these rhythms, and I experiment with them personally. But when I was there in the mountains sleeping, it was completely quiet at times, completely quiet. And that was really interesting, because it was so quiet that there was a single cell tower on the ridge, like pretty far away, like pretty far in the valley. There was a single cell tower. There was no Wi-Fi that reached my tent. There was a Wi-Fi router a little further away, like in camp, but those die out pretty quick, as everyone knows. So the only artificial electromagnetic field that I was aware of was that cell tower. And I've had this experience in other places too. And when you wake up in the morning, your brain typically is at a lower noise level. Like, I mean, people understand that, you sleep and you go into deep sleep to regenerate and repair. So your noise levels go down, and those weaker signals are able to stand above that low tide. And that's when you get dreams, and let's say like vivid dreams or lucid dreams, whatever, right? But there have been times, many times now, I have good hearing. It's been many times now where I've woken up, and before my system fully comes online and my noise levels are down, I can hear those sort of like cellular signals. And it's very clear because it's not just a hum. It's like a very clear signal modulated wave. So it'll be like, and then it'll go quiet. And that would have been like a data packet. And then like, and so I can hear these cellular waves at times. And people that are sensitive, I think what happens a lot of the time is like, oh, I have tinnitus. It's like, no, you just are able to hear every single wave in your area so much that it just becomes a hum. that you think is tinnitus. But I bet if you went to that quiet area, you wouldn't have tinnitus anymore. Because there's times I'm sitting places like a busy coffee shop in a city, and I can hear all these like hums and everything, and you just kind of have to drown it out. But that's because I'm able to pick up on these waves, and I think more people are able to do that than like they may realize. I think it's actually fairly common. A lot of tinnitus is actually just we've over the past 50 years kind of like insidiously added these frequencies into our environment. It's been so slow that if we turn them all off instantly together, like around the world, I bet people would be like literally a mind-blowing experience for probably everyone. But because like, oh, well, let's add another one here. We'll add this. We'll put in a 5G. It's like you didn't have a before and after. Is this, long-term change in that. And so it's affected people. And now, I have tinnitus. It's like, no, you may not have tinnitus. You just may be in a very busy environment. You're in an apartment. There's 12 Wi-Fi routers next to you. There's 20 smart devices per apartment. There's the power grid. There's all of the towers outside. There's all the hospital and military signals. I mean, I could just keep going on. It gets crazy.
It's funny. I considered myself hearing impaired because when I'm out with a group of people, if there's too much background noise, I can't hear shit. It's like maybe the fact is that I'm picking up so much that I can't hear. I haven't learned how to filter that stuff out. And basically, in many ways, I have become more secluded and more of a, I don't want to use the word hides from the world, recluse. I don't want to say the word recluse, but in more often cases, like I don't go out to places anymore because I don't enjoy it. Because if the volume of the restaurant, venue, crowd, whatever is too loud, I'm not enjoying myself. I can't hear what I came to hear. I can't carry on a conversation with someone. So maybe it's the same as tinnitus, is that I'm just picking up too much. And I'm not able to filter it out so that I can actually focus on the conversation at hand. What do you think about that as a hypothesis?
Yeah, I think everyone has different levels of sensitivity. And I think a lot of people are realizing that they're more sensitive to these things than they may realize.
Sorry about that. It's getting blinded.